In this video, you're going to be installing and running Webpack for the very first time. Now, you just learned how to install a dependency locally and access it via a script. We'll be doing that exact same thing again, and then we're going to talk about the Webpack config file, which allows us to set up Webpack to fit the needs of our application. We'll start off with a very simple config file, just a bare bones config, allowing us to actually run Webpack successfully. Then in the other videos in this section, we'll move on to adding more complex features. So step one is to get the new tool installed. Over inside of the terminal, I'm going to shut down the script build, and right here, I'm going to use yarn add Webpack at 3.1.0, which is the latest version. I'm going to go ahead and run this, and that is going to install it locally, which means it's adding everything into the node modules folder, and that also means I have access to it via scripts. We're going to be creating a brand new script for Webpack, and this is going to be just a key value pair. Now I'm going to call this script build, and we actually already have another script called build, so I'm going to change this one over to build-babel. As I mentioned in the previous videos, Webpack can actually run Babel for us, so we're not going to need a separate command, though I will leave this around for the moment. What we are going to do is actually set up the build script. And in this case, we just want to run the Webpack command. We don't have to provide any other arguments right here. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to set up that Webpack config file. That's where we're going to provide all of the stuff necessary. So for Babel, we had about 3 or 4 things. For Webpack, by the end of this section, we're going to have about a dozen, maybe 24 things. So it's not going to be sustainable or readable to add that all to the command. That's why the Webpack config file exists. Now, we can go ahead and save package.json real quick and try to run this script. Over inside of the terminal, I can clear the output and use yarn run build. This is going to run the new build script, and when I do it, we can actually see we're just getting an error. As mentioned before, there's no configuration file in place. Webpack doesn't know what to do. By default, Webpack does nothing. We have to tell it how to work with our application. Otherwise, it is going to do absolutely nothing. So that's what we're going to focus on next, is setting up this Webpack config file. Over inside of the application, we're going to make a few tweaks. First up, I'm going to close counter example and app.js. We are going to leave index.html open, as we'll be using that in a few seconds. What I want to do from here is take app.js and actually move that into the playground folder. We're going to be copying and pasting all of the code out of there. We're not going to rewrite that stuff, but I do want to start with a clean slate so we can see exactly how Webpack works. Right here in source, once again, I am going to make an app.js file. This is just going to be a brand new one. And all we're going to do is use console.log. App.js is running. Excellent. Now that we have our basic client-side JavaScript set up, let's go ahead and actually create a Webpack config file that knows how to work with this. We're going to create a new file, and this new file needs to live in the root of your folder. That's where Webpack is going to look for it. So if it's not in the root of the folder or its name isn't correct, Webpack is not going to find it. It needs to be called webpack.config.js. Now this is actually a Node script. So we have access to everything we would have access to inside of a Node.js application. Now this isn't a Node course, but we are going to be touching on just a little bit of Node because we are going to need to use a little bit in order to get by. We're going to be using a little bit here inside of Webpack config, and we're going to be using a little bit later on when we create a production server. Now the good news is that Node is just JavaScript. There are really only a few changes that we're going to have to keep an eye out for. For the most part, everything is going to look 100% familiar to what you've been doing in JavaScript already. In order to get Webpack working, there are 2 critical pieces of information we have to give it. First up, we have to let it know where the entry point is. Where does our application kick off? For us, that is going to be app.js inside of the source folder. We also have to tell it where to output the final bundle file. So we're creating that one big JavaScript file that contains everything our app needs to run. Where do we put that? We're going to provide all of that information right inside of here. That is going to allow us to run Webpack successfully. So let's go ahead and kick things off by setting up a property on module. This is module.exports, and we're going to set it equal to an object. On this object, we're going to be defining all of the configuration details for our Webpack build. Now, module.exports is a node thing. It's a way to expose something, in this case an object, to another file. So Webpack is going to grab this file, it is going to run it, and it's going to have access to whatever we put on this object. So it's important to set it up on module.exports. On this object, we can now provide all of the Webpack configuration details, and there are just a few that we need to have. So we can actually get things started with just a very small Webpack config object. One of the first ones we have to set up is entry. This lets us tell Webpack where it should start. What's that main file? For us, that is app.js inside of the source folder. So right here, I'm going to specify inside of quotes as the value / a relative path. I'm getting a little Visual Studio Code auto completion. We're going to go into the source folder. In there, we have app.js. So that is the first property we need. We need to tell Webpack where it should start. Now, all of these properties are outlined on the Webpack documentation, which you can find on their website. And I do want to show you where that lives real quick because it's a great resource and it's going to allow you to customize Webpack down the line. That is webpack.js.org. Over here, there are a ton of great resources. They have a page on the concepts and guides behind Webpack, but what we're going to focus on is the documentation, which outlines all of the properties you can set up inside of Webpack config. For us, we just set up entry. If I crack this open, we can see the entry property. I can click it and it can bring us over to that page where we can learn all the different ways it can be used. Now, what we're going to explore next is how we can provide the output. This is the other must-have before we can run Webpack without getting an error. And that's going to happen just down below entry right here. I'm going to add on another property after that comma. It is output. And this one actually gets set equal to an object. There are two things we have to provide here. The first is the path. We'll leave that empty for the moment. And the second is the file name. Now the file name can be anything we like. I'm just going to go ahead and use bundle.js, which is a very common file name for Webpack, but you could rename this to just about anything. Now, path is where things get a little trickier. This is the absolute path on your machine to where you want to output that Webpack file. So we get all of our code into this one JavaScript file called the bundle, and this needs to get put somewhere. Where do we want to put it? We want to put it inside of the public folder in this project. The tricky thing is that we can't use /. This needs to be an absolute path, which means that we have to provide the path to this project on our machine, which is clearly going to be different for everyone. If you're on a different operating system or your username is different, the path is going to be different as well. Lucky for us, there is a variable that's going to make that a whole lot easier. We can explore this variable up above by just using console.log. Console.log, I'm going to dump it to the screen. It is __ dir name, and it contains the path to the current location. So for us, it will contain the path to the Indecision app project folder. We can go ahead and print this out to the screen by just running this file through Node. Over in the terminal, that's going to be node space followed by the file name, webpack.config.js. Now, we're not using any of Node's fancy features. We are just trying to dump this variable to the screen so we can see what its value is. And if we run it, you should get the absolute path to your project folder. Obviously, yours is going to look different than mine, depending on your operating system, where you put the project folder and your username. You're going to get a completely different path, but it should indeed be the correct one for your setup. And this is indeed correct for mine. Now, we're not quite done yet. I don't want to put the bundle in the root of the project. Instead, I want to get it inside of the public folder so I can serve it up to the browser. Unfortunately, because each operating system treats paths a little differently, there is no easy way to do this with just string concatenation, as there are edge cases. So we're going to be taking advantage of a single function from Node that's going to allow us to join together two paths. We're going to join together this absolute path with the local path to the public folder. We can explore this real quick by heading over to the browser. Over here, I'm going to Google Node path. Path is the built-in module we're going to be taking advantage of. Right here, we can find the documentation. Now, this contains a bunch of methods for path manipulation. We're going to be using one path.join, and you can actually see an example of it right here. We call path.join as a JavaScript method, which it is. Right here, we pass in all of the arguments, our partial paths, and the output is the final one. So we start off at foo, we go into bar, baz, ASDF, QUX, and down below at the very end, we go up a directory. And the end result is exactly what you see right here, foobar, baz, ASDF, and this one is completely removed because we went up a folder, meaning we went out of that directory. We're going to be using path.join exactly as we see it here over inside of our project. Now, first up, we have to load it in. Up at the very top, we're going to make a constant called path, and we're going to access the module code by using require, which is a built-in Node function that we will not be using a whole lot throughout the course. But we do need to load in the module by name right here inside of quotes path. Now we have access to path.join. We can use it to join together our two paths. That's going to be path.join. Joining together __ name with the local path, which is just the string public, and the end result is going to be the actual final path we want. Over inside of the terminal, I'm going to rerun the previous command, and right here, we are getting the absolute path on our machines to the public folder in the Indecision app project. Now we're ready to use this value, the one I have highlighted down below. I'm going to cut it out, remove the console.log altogether, and paste it in right here, removing the quotes. So right here, the value for path is whatever comes back from the path.join method. Let's go ahead and save this file and try to rerun Webpack. We now have everything in place. We have a minimal Webpack setup. It doesn't have all of the fancy features of Webpack just yet, but it is indeed going to work without crashing the application. So over inside of the terminal, we're going to rerun yarn, run build, the command that previously failed. This time though, if we run it, we're going to see it was actually successful because when it ran Webpack, it was indeed able to find that Webpack config file. We formatted it correctly, so it actually went through the process without any errors. Now there's a whole bunch of output here, and you'll be seeing this output about 3,000 times throughout the course, but I do want to take a quick moment to break it down. So here we have the hash, which allows us to verify the integrity of the bundle output. We also have the Webpack version, which is indeed correct, and we have the time it took to get everything done. Down below, we have a little information about the output and the input, the output coming first. There is a single asset that Webpack wrote. It is bundle.js. It had a total size of 2.51 kilobytes, and we have some information related to chunks over here, which we're going to ignore for the moment. Down below the output, we had the input. It found a single file. That file didn't import anything else, so there is no dependency tree. All we have is app.js in the source folder, which had a total size of 34 bytes. Now the end result is inside of the public folder, you should have a brand new bundle.js file. If we go ahead and crack that open, we can take a look at what's inside, and much like the Babel output, the Webpack output contains a lot of code you did not write, but it is code that is essential for Webpack to actually do its job. If we scroll to the very bottom of the file though, we should see the code we did write. Right here, we have console.log app.js is running. So let's go ahead and actually load this file in and view this output in the console. Inside of the public folder, that means we can delete the scripts directory altogether. We don't need that app.js file anymore. And it also means that inside of index.html, we can remove all of these script tags. I'm going to remove React and React DOM. We'll be loading those in via Webpack in a few videos. And down here, we're going to tweak the path. So it's /, which is the root of the web server, which is the public folder. And then we just access bundle.js. I'm going to go ahead and save index.html. We can then make sure everything is running correctly by visiting it over inside of the browser. If I go over to Indecision app, what do we get? Right here, we get app.js is running. Now, if I were to change that file, app.js, let's add some exclamation marks on for a little bit of energy, and I were to save it, well, we're going to notice that it actually doesn't restart automatically. So we can fix that real quick inside of package.json. Just like we were able to watch our Babel command, we're also able to watch Webpack. So I'm going to set up watch, save the file, restart the command in the terminal. By using yarn run build, this time around, it is not just going to run and finish. It's obviously going to output the new bundle, but now you can see it's waiting for the files to change. So if I view the application over inside of Chrome, we get app.js is running, which is fantastic. What's even cooler though, is that if I were to change it and save it, the browser is automatically going to refresh, reflecting the new changes to the application. And there we have it, our very first successful Webpack build. Now, this is a very simple setup. We're not taking advantage of almost all of the features that Webpack has to offer. And there are actually features we now have access to that we just don't know about yet. So in the next video, we're going to learn how we already have access to the ES6 import export syntax, which means that we're going to be able to break up our applications into multiple files. We're going to learn all about that in the next one. For now, though, let's just take a quick moment to recap. In this video, we installed Webpack locally and we set up a command that allows us to run Webpack. Now, when we tried to do that without a config file, it failed. We learned that we do need to provide a config file, so we set that up. There are two core things you have to provide: the input, the entry, and the output. So what files am I taking in? And when I take them all and combine them, where should I put that new thing? And we provided both of these via entry and output. Now, entry was a little simpler. We were able to provide a relative path to our file. Output required a little more configuration, but this is necessary, as we're going to see later when we start introducing things like CSS to our Webpack builds. For now, though, we have a very nice setup, something we can grow and expand upon. In the next one, we're going to talk about ES6 import export, so stay tuned. I'll see you then.